Hey, Texas Values friends. Jonathan Saenz, president of Texas Values. Great to be with you on a glorious day in the state of Texas and in our country. This is a special segment of the March for Life. And as a matter of fact, I wasn't quite ready to go on. I said I was, but I wasn't. So anyway, I think I look all right. Is everything straight? What do you think? Okay, drop us a comment. I got one more button right here. All right. I've got my coat on even though I'm inside the studio so I can sort of match what's happening on the ground in Washington, D.C. This is a special segment of the Texas Values Report because we want to bring you some of the coverage and some of the going-ons. And look, there's my good friend Aaron Getz at the March for Life in D.C. And I'll talk in more detail a little bit more about that. Ashley, are we able to hear the audio? Can you switch to their audio with that live feed?
There's captions.
Okay, so people can, but we won't actually be able to hear what they're saying. Let's see if we can figure that out, because that'd be a lot of fun. I want to hear what the people are saying in the speeches, not just the captions.
Of the reason why I am here today. He saved my life. The pregnancy center saved my life. I was trafficked from the age of 2 to the age of 29. At the age of 29, I was looking at death. I was trafficked in 33 different states. I was hooked onto crystal meth. I wanted to die. I wanted my son dead.
Wow.
I had no life. I had no hope. But then I went to a pregnancy center in New Hampshire. And a woman named Phyllis Phelps, yes, saved my life. She gave me the word, I know a man named Jesus.
Look,
yes,
you're hearing
yes.
personal stories from the
Come
March
on.
for Life in D.C. We're doing sort of
Yes.
a split screen here. And, if you're watching and you see my son in the crowd somewhere, let me know, because my vision's I'm kind of nearsighted when I'm in the studio. I can't see what's on the screen always quite as well. But special segment of the Texas Values Report to bring you live coverage of the March for Life in Washington, D.C. I was there last year, the year before, could not make it this year, but my son's there. Johnny Saenz is there somewhere with the St. Dominic Savio Catholic High School group. There he is. They were at the White House yesterday. This was earlier today, though. He was getting ready for the snow, about to walk outside. And if you've never been before, I would say the March for Life is almost dominated by high school and student groups. Or at least that's sort of the segment of people that you could probably see the most that are, well represented. It's an absolutely huge demonstration of young people saying the issue of life matters to us. We want to be public about it. And shout out to St. Dominic Savio Catholic High School and so many Catholic high schools and other schools that are there from different Christian denominations and other faiths and so on that make it a priority to go to this event, okay? A lot of schools probably wouldn't. Oh, it's outside, it's a demonstration, it's the abortion issue, that's too controversial or whatever. And I'm going to actually share this feed on my Facebook account so people can see that and get the benefit of that. I invite you to do that too. Share this, like it, put it into some groups. Let's get more people involved in this conversation in what's happening in Washington, D.C. at the March for Life. Shout out to Ashley figuring out the split screen from our team, because I don't know how that stuff works, but I'm glad that we're taking more use and advantage of technology that we have. But I'm excited about it. And, okay, I'm looking at our feed here to update. Hold on a second. Let me share this again. And let's see if it comes up. There it is. I wanted to tag the March for Life group. You missed, though, because we weren't quite on the air yet when we started. New Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, gave a speech. Doesn't it look amazing out there? Snow's falling. I bet the kids are having a great time, right? There's a lot of joy. But look, this is a serious topic, okay? And let's just be clear on where I am on the issue, all right? I stand for life, always have, always will. But there's a lot of people out there with signs like this and others. You'll see those next week. The Texas Rally for Life is next week on Saturday, January 27th. Check our website for updates about that, social media. We're going to have a great group out there, and I'm going to be out there with my family as well. But if you've never been to the one in D.C., it's absolutely extraordinary. Like I was saying, a lot of kids there, a lot of school groups, a lot of babies, strollers, families. I think it's probably one of the biggest marches that happens every year, going on 50 years now, right? I think this is the 51st year, if not the 50th year. But now we've overturned Roe versus Wade. For so long, the thrust was, let's overturn Roe. Not that that was the only thing to do in the pro-life movement, but certainly a big part of it. And the reason why was people said, well, the Supreme Court has said abortion is a constitutional amendment. There's nothing you can do about it. There's only so much pro-life legislation that you can pass without running into that. Not the case anymore. And I think a lot of people were hiding behind that. Oh, yeah, support life, but what are you going to do? The Supreme Court said it's okay. Not the case anymore, right? It's been a year and a half. It was in June of 2022. I remember where I was. I may go down that road in just a minute. That memory lane of the morning, I don't know, 6 or 7:30 in the morning when I had COVID. Could not even pull myself out of bed, but I knew that it could quite be a historic day. June 24th, I'm going to go back and look in the calendar, I believe, of 2022 when Roe versus Wade was overturned. But the work on the life movement's not over, all right? And I want to bring something to y'all, though, as I get a late sip of my coffee. It's been a day, okay, for me. Started extremely early, and I've been running all over the place today. But I want y'all to see this book. It's called The Legacy of Life book. You can order this. We'll try to put a link. It's legacyoflifebook.com is the website if you want to get a copy of it. And the title is Honoring the 50 Greatest Pro-Life Leaders of the Last 50 Years. Now, I'm not one of them because there's some really important people in here, even though I feel like I've done my share of pro-life work. But I was able to and invited to write 2 different articles in this book. One and 2 people from Texas that were a part of the 50 people. Carol Everett, who was sort of the Abby Johnson of 30 years ago from the state of Texas. And then speaking of Abby Johnson, I had the great honor of writing an article about Abby. So on page 62 is Carol. Where's Abby at? I think she's a little bit later, or is she earlier? Let me see where I saw her. 98. And so it's a great book, though, because look, an opportunity for us to look back. And I remember the first time, this is the one with Carol Everett in the book. You can see a couple of great pictures of her and then a little write-up of the article that I wrote about her. But I remember the first time I went to the March for Life. And actually, there's a student, I think, that's talking, or a young man, if we can go back to the audio at the March for Life. Ashley.
It has been a mission of ours to help out the local State College Pregnancy Resource Center. We have been fortunate enough to build close relations with the staff and volunteers who constantly provide our local community with free services for women and children. And this is just one of the many ways we stay active in this fight to end abortion. My story is not one involving a direct connection to abortion. Instead, it involves a normal college student who has fears and worries of knowing that I have different beliefs than most of the students on campus. It is knowing that people will call me insensitive and that due to my gender, I cannot have a say on this matter. It is knowing I may lose friends when they find out that I am unapologetically pro-life.
You know, we're bringing you live coverage from the March for Life in Washington, D.C., one of the largest marches in Washington, D.C., year after year. My son is there. Johnny Saenz, look out for him. If you see him there, excited about him being there with his high school group, but so many other people are there too, probably over 100,000 people there. And you were hearing some comments from a young man, and I thought it was interesting. You brought up a point that you hear come from the other side a lot of times. Men, saying men shouldn't be able to talk about this since we can't get pregnant. It's funny how the left does that, right? Some of them say men can get pregnant, but then when they talk about the life issue, oh, this doesn't matter to you. That's a whole separate issue, sort of. But look, we know that men cannot get pregnant. But they try to use this argument a lot, though, as if that disqualifies men from being able to have a say in this issue. And I always like to draw them in a little bit when they try to set this up. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So you're saying men, because we can't get pregnant and, we're never going to have a child and all this, it doesn't affect us. We shouldn't have an opinion, or you should ignore what we have to say. That's correct. They'll respond to me. And I remember when I was a student at the University of Houston, when I was a law student, I was leading the pro-life group there. And this is the exchange I had with a young lady. And she said, that's right. You shouldn't be talking about it. You shouldn't be here. I was hosting an event that we're having on campus. And I said, okay, I just want to make sure I'm correct, though. Men, and no man should have a role in making any decision that relates to this. She was like, that's absolutely right. And I said, do you know that the 9 justices on the U.S. Supreme Court that decided Roe versus Wade were all men? And she just kind of looked at me without a response. I said, it was okay for them to have an opinion. And she had nothing to say. And she said, but that's different. No, it's not. There's no difference. She didn't have a response because she knew that her argument had all of a sudden fallen apart. But look, and I get the logic, if you will, what the point people are trying to make, but it's if it doesn't affect men. I remember early in my legal career. Oh, real quick, let's go back to the shot at the March for Life because we have Janine Mancini, who is the leader of the March for Life. Let's see if we can hear some of her comments.
This film, Cabrini, will be in theaters in just a couple of months. Please welcome to the stage my friend, Roger Severino, the Vice President for Domestic Policy at the Heritage Foundation.
Coming up.
Welcome,
Let's
Roger, to the stage to hear more about this beautiful film that embodies our theme, with every woman, for every child. Roger.
"15 years ago, my brother Leo Severino, director Alejandro Monteverde, and actor Eduardo Verástegui went to Hollywood with a mission to shine a light in the darkness. Their first film was Bella, which premiered here at the March. It became an instant pro-life classic.
I didn't know Roger
and they
had a
followed
connection
it up with a
to
little
Bella,
movie called Sound
Bella.
of Freedom.
Excellent pro-life movie if you haven't seen it. One of the star actors in that is Eduardo Verástegui. Okay, I got to say it the right way because it's got a kind of strong feel to it. Mexican actor who was very popular in the Mexican soap operas, the telenovelas, as we call them here in Texas, and on Spanish television. And he left all that. I mean, he was, sharp-looking guy. All the women thought he was amazing. That whole scene in Image, and he left it all and said, "You know what? I'm not doing this anymore." And he embraced his Catholic Christian faith and said, "I want to do things that are moral. I don't want to do anything that takes away from our faith." And one of the first things he did was produce this incredible movie called Bella. Our good friend Jason Jones was a part of that. And actually, there's a clip here, right here. Let's see what they're showing.
They sing in Italian, so they can be proud of the land they came from. She imbues these castaways with a dignity their parents never knew. For she believes the wounds these children bear can only be healed
actually, I think they're showing
through
a clip
love
from a different movie that's
and through
coming
an
out soon,
education
more
of the
a
heart.
recent movie. But if you haven't seen the movie Bella, very well put together pro-life movie from probably 10, 15 years ago. And I bring that up because, there weren't a lot of pro-life movies being made 10, 15 years ago. And a lot of people said we need to enter into this market more as Christian media started to get stronger and people started to make a lot of Christian-based movies. And so, and one of the things that I was asked to do, all right, Eduardo Verástegui comes into town, and he is still a sharp-looking guy, well-known, and he sort of had a following. But some people said, hey, he wants to meet the governor, and he wants to kind of connect with some folks. Who knows how to do that? Somebody drew my name out of a hat and said, Jonathan Saenz knows everybody there. Y'all connect with him. And so I got to spend a day with Eduardo Verástegui. And as a matter of fact, it coincided with the first day of a 40 Days for Life campaign. So we had lunch earlier in the day, and then we went to pray, and everybody sort of flocked. Oh my God, Eduardo's here, because it was a couple years after Bella came out. The media was there, but a great guy. And he's continued to be on this mission of making great films, bringing more attention to the life issue. I know he was very supportive of our governor and a lot of things that the governor's done and so on. And so, look, being more involved in the media, having movies that show that pro-life witness, that show that women do have a future, that there are options that are not just your baby has to die and you have to suffer with some of that regret. So great to see Roger connect with that and bring that back into people's light. And so where are we at on time? And they're going to start marching soon. All right, the march is supposed to start around 1 o'clock. It doesn't always start to a T. By the way, speaking of important and interesting people that are at the march, my good buddy Jonathan Keller posted a picture. Jim Harbaugh's there, all right? Just came off winning the national championship, the head coach for the Michigan Wolverines, who Texas is playing next year. I'm looking forward to that. Don't get mad at me. The last time we played, we won. Nonetheless, great to see Jim Harbaugh there, and a well-known pro-life advocate. Maybe other people didn't know it. I've heard it talked about before, and he's been public about it. But what a great opportunity coming off winning the national championship and doing what he loves and being out there and being a part of that public witness. Of course, Jonathan Keller got a picture. Jonathan Keller's always sort of in the VIP room one way or another. All right, you want to meet important people, hang out with JK, and you'll get some good opportunities for that. But I was talking earlier about the first time I was at the March for Life. Are they still showing the video? I think they're still showing this movie clip. We'll go back to it in just a minute, though. For the live coverage, this is a special segment of the Texas Values Report with live coverage from the March for Life in Washington, D.C., one of the largest marches that takes place every year in the state capitol. Speaking of, there he is, Jim Harbaugh.
It's my pleasure to introduce somebody who speaks truth, clarity, and grace, combines bold conviction with kindness, fearless, humble, and courageous, proud father of the Watson 7, a helpful warrior for the sanctity of life. Please give a great welcome to Benjamin Watson.
Wow. I mean, look, with the reigning national champion head coach of football, because look at how all the ratings went crazy with the national championship in football, comes to speak at the March for Life. That's going to get some huge attention. Talk about some courage. And look, it shouldn't take courage, but I'm just going to be honest with you. Those guys are going to catch a lot of flack. They shouldn't, but they do. And they probably have for years. And they're like, what are you going to do? I got a national championship trophy. I don't need to answer to you. I can be very public about how I feel. And athletes are being more public about their views on a variety of issues. So why not this issue? Speaking of, I want to go back to the live coverage of the March for Life, because another athlete, he's not in athletics anymore, but retired NFL, one of the greatest players, tight ends, Ben Watson, is speaking at the March for Life right now. If we'll go to that
much
segment.
of America. Row is done, but even so, in the cold and the snow, you have continued to travel from around the nation to this place to recognize that the fight for life is not over. God's word challenges us in the book of Micah to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly before our God. I believe that this is the essence of what it means to be with every woman and for every child. With uncommon courage, we must do justice, not only by protecting innocent preborn life, but by correcting injustice and rebuilding opportunities so that mothers and fathers can flourish. With deep
we're giving you live coverage of the March for Life in Washington, D.C. What a beautiful backdrop, too, right? You can see the Washington Monument behind him. It is snowing. I bet my son, Jonathan Saenz, is having the time of his life at the March for Life. I'm so excited that he's there, and I'm really proud of him, too, for continuing to be a part of this movement. And sure, you grow up in our family, you're going to go to events like this, but I see him now sort of taking his own step. He made the decision on his own to go on this trip. We had already been on the trip before. As a matter of fact, I said, hey, you've already been once. We already paid for it once. If you want to go this time, I fully support it, but it needs to be your decision. He decided that he wanted to go, and I was excited about that. But I'm also excited, too, because he gets to be around a lot of people that are like-minded, that energy, that synergy, if you will, to know, hey, there are a lot of people that believe the same way I do, and you don't have to be afraid of that, right? You don't have to feel like you're standing alone. And he's an athlete himself, right? Four-year member of the football team. He's going to be a member of the varsity baseball team as well at his high school. So he knows what it's like to be out in the spotlight, to be a part of athletics, to go through that sacrifice, and also an opportunity to be an encouragement to others, right, who may not know if they want to get out there and put themselves out there in such an issue that matters. It is literally life and death. And it's kind of interesting because I think about young people sometimes, and we see the pro-life movement more so than others at times have so many different ages of kids that are a part of these events and this movement. I have thought for a long time, and I could be wrong, that part of it is, some of it is that age. You're old enough to sort of know what's going on, but you're young enough to sort of remember being a kid. You're sort of in touch with what it is to be a child, and it almost touches you in a human way, in sort of a biological way, right? You're like, man, I was just that age, right? I mean, it wasn't that long ago. And I think another reason is, for one other reason or another, young people are talking more about these issues. Some of them may or may not know someone who's sexually active or may have become pregnant or something. And so it has that connection. These are things that are sort of happening in their lives or questions they're thinking about more, right? And so what a great opportunity, though, for people to be a part of that witness and to see, oh my gosh, I think that's what you'll notice when you're there at the March for Life is you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize there were so many pro-life people in our country. And that's not all of them, right? But when you go there and there's 100, 200,000 people or whatever, let's go to the video they were showing real quick on the March for Life. If we can get the audio back.
Life and dignity of both the mother and the child. And that is why we march.
7 out of 10 women who get abortions are coerced into abortion.
It can be easy to fall into despair and hopelessness just given the legislation and the laws that we're up against. It's important to speak truth, to go out there, to be that voice, to be that hope, to be that light in the darkness.
And while the march began as a response to Roe, we don't end as a response to Roe being overturned. Why? Because we're not yet done.
The main goal here is abortion becomes unthinkable.
Yeah, a lot of great marches. Texas isn't on that list because we've had a big march for a long time. So these states where you see that, a lot of times haven't had quite an established march in the past. So don't think that we're not involved in some of that. And we're going to go back real quick. If we can go back to the video, my good friend Aaron Getz, who leads the state
March
effort
program.
and was a speaker at one of our policy events last year.
We marched for life in 8 capitals across the country, and we're going to double that in 2024. Come together for both mom and baby from Connecticut, my home state, to Michigan, all the way to California, just to name a few. You see now standing behind me are the heroes of the movement, pro-life leaders from across the nation who work each and every day to build a culture of life in their communities. The names of these organizations and the leaders that represent them are now on the Jumbotron right next to me. Each organization, they represent and meet a different need within the pro-life movement. They are made up of pregnancy resource centers, advocacy groups, doctors. A few of my state march partners are behind me.
You know, look,
and
it's
many,
so important to do it at the state level. All right, if you're in Texas, because most of our viewers, I'm sure, are, if not all of them, the Texas March for Life, Texas Rally for Life, as the event's called. The main one is in Austin. There's one in San Antonio tomorrow. There's some in some other cities. But really the one that probably draws the biggest crowd is that, and that we're going to be a part of primarily, is at our state capitol on Saturday, January 27th. And the march starts at 1, then there's some speeches and stuff like you see here at 3. So the whole event, you want to get down here by 12 to get set up on the north side of the Capitol and then get ready to march sort of on the west side over to the south side of the Capitol. So about 12 to 4 is what your schedule will be. And go to texasrallyforlife.org or go to our website. You can find out information about it. But we're looking forward to that. But they're getting ready to march there in D.C. in just a minute or two. And as I mentioned, my son is at the event. My oldest son, Jonathan Saenz, with his school group, and I'm glad they're there safe. I bet you they're having the time of their life. Look at that snow. Let's go back to that video. Man, it's like a blizzard out there now. Look at Aaron, not even missing a beat either. Let's catch our audio again.
Needed, and to that end, we would be most grateful if you would consider making a financial gift to the March for Life today. If you take a look up on the screen to my left, you can do that right now by texting the word
awesome
GIVE.
scene.
That's
Man, I wish I was
GIVE.
there. All right, I got other things, other family responsibilities later today and tomorrow, but I know that my oldest son's having a great time. Look, they're talking about giving. Consider supporting our work. Look, there is no question the work we did to lead the effort on the Texas Heartbeat Law has had an impact. There's an estimated 50,000 lives that have been saved every year since the Heartbeat Law went into effect. We're talking about over 100,000 now. You can go to our website, texasheartbeatlaw.com, to see more of that information, get connected with pregnancy help resources and all that good stuff that relates to the movement. And we love them both, the mother and the child. But if you see value in our work, make a donation at txvalues.org right now, and you can continue to see how we're making a difference. You can see the return you'll have on that investment and how important it is. And so we encourage you to do that. Look, our collective budget's about $2 million for both of the entities that we run under our banner. And, look, we had a lot of fundraising in December. January is just as important of a month. There's been court cases going on the life issue. We're involved in preparing for next legislative session, pushing back the narrative that we don't love them both, the mother and the child. There are a variety of different things we do. I like to tell people all the time, we have more than one tool in the toolbox, whether it's the courts, the legislature, the media, the elections, you name it. Speaking of elections, we got a great resource, churches and elections. We got a huge primary election coming up in Texas, starts a week or two before the beginning of March. There is a runoff event for House District 2. That is up in the north part of the state, just a little bit east of Dallas. That runoff election starts next week on Monday. I think it's from Monday to Friday is early voting, and the main election day is on January 30th. And so, look, a lot of work to do on the life issue, but a lot of it does relate to having people in elective office that are pro-life. I mean, look, the Speaker of the House was just there. Mike Johnson, my good friend, who knew he was going to go to such high places? I'm not surprised. I mean, he's been a great guy, a strong lawyer. We worked together on some religious liberty issues, and great to see him as the Speaker of the House, but making an appearance at the March for Life. That's why elections matter. I mean, you want to put someone in office that's going to be pro-life, and then they're going to be there at the March for Life. I can't remember another Speaker of the House being at the March for Life. Ever. Maybe there was. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, right? When President Trump spoke at the March for Life a couple years ago, I think that's the first time a president was there in person. It matters who you vote for. And I remember when I went in 2008, the first time I went to the March for Life, President Bush was not there. They showed a video. He sort of brought some comments in that they played by audio, which was really nice. And he hosted a reception at the White House for pro-life leaders. I wasn't supposed to be there, okay? Kelly Shackelford was invited. Somehow he couldn't go, and I was able to go in his place, if you will. And there was some, giants, some people that are in this book that I was talking about earlier. If you haven't gotten this book yet, Legacy of Life, the top 50 pro-life leaders in the past 50 years, really kind of a celebration of Roe versus Wade being overturned. The website is legacyoflifebook.com. Great book. There are 2 articles in here written by me, yours truly, one about Abby Johnson, the other about Carol Everett. The 2 of them were on the list for the top 50 leaders in the past 50 years, the pro-life movement. But I was at the event at the White House, and I've been to the White House several times, but this was the first time I went, and I was in the West Wing. I was really blown away by being there and just the significance of it, right? And a few years ago, I actually went, I was standing right outside the Oval Office, and I almost couldn't process it, right? I'm like, am I really here? And I remember the ceiling was kind of low, and I was like, man, just extraordinary. And so, sorry, I'm playing with my earpiece here for our audio. But but President Bush at the time, George W. Bush, took the time to have a reception to honor pro-life leaders. Actually got to shake his hand. I met him in person. And so, look, it matters who you vote for. I mean, if you want to have pro-life policies, you have to have pro-life people in elective office. And, this was talked about 6-8 years ago, right? The reason you have people like Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court is because we had a pro-life president who pledged that, right? I think there were 3 Supreme Court justices that he picked, but that last one, Amy Coney Barrett, I think a lot of people felt like, okay, this is going to be the one that's going to give us that final vote we need to overturn Roe versus Wade, and they were right? A lot of us believe that way, but remember the Texas Heartbeat Law was coming up around that time too, and we had victories in the court on that issue as well. Some people have said that the success of the Texas Heartbeat Law getting passed, being upheld in law, and I guess the sky not falling in Texas after that, allowed the Supreme Court to see, hey, maybe the culture is ready for this. Maybe this is where we are now. And of course, right after that, the Roe versus Wade was overturned by the Dobbs decision out of Mississippi. Let's go real quick. I think they're finishing up some talks And there's Pastor Greg Laurie is giving some comments at the March for Life in D.C. as we continue our coverage.
Capital to speak up for the unborn. We pray for our nation. We pray for young women who find themselves pregnant, that they would carry these babies to term and raise them up or put them up for adoption. We pray that we as believers, the church, would be there to support these mothers. We pray that you would raise up godly people in our government, in the Congress, in the Senate, in the White House, as well as local government officials who would stand for the unborn. You tell us in your word, when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. Lord, we pray for a great spiritual awakening to sweep the United States of America. We need another revival. And now as we prepare to march for the unborn, bless us. And we remember the prayer that Jesus gave us 2,000 years ago, and we pray it together now. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. God bless you.
Amen. All right, here they go. They're getting ready to march. I'm going to pull up real quick. And, oh, wait, hold on. Matthew West is up. My best friend. Let's hear Matthew West sing.
Through the night with a light from above, from the mountains to the prairies.
Don't let me sing on live.
To the
oceans,
white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Well, here they come. We'll watch the first line in just a minute when they start marching. We're giving you live coverage of the March for Life here from Texas Values. I'm in a warm studio, but I got my coat on just so I can kind of, feel like I'm there like I was last year, the year before. My son, Jonathan Saenz, is there with his high school group, excited about him having this experience. I was going to try to pull up and see if I can make Ashley from our team blush too. Some pictures we had when we were there last year. What an extraordinary event too. I forget the guy's name. Jonathan Rumi. I don't even know if I say his last name right. Jesus from The Chosen. They had a great event there. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. At the March for Life, their banquet that they had it was the night of the event.
And we've got team coverage of this massive event, coverage from this.
Hang on. There's Gene Mancini here. I'll send this. Let's see if Ashley wants to post it. But it was a great scene there last year. And look, and it was the first march after Roe versus Wade was overturned. Let me see. I have one other photo that we had right in front when they were getting started to march with one of our interns, Greg McCarthy, who I wouldn't be surprised if he's there this time too. But, there's nothing like being there. So if you haven't been to the March for Life, make your plans now for next January, because it is certainly worth your time. And, there's just something about being there that you won't forget. And you know what happens too? The media a lot of times tries to ignore it, right? As if it's not happening and, there was some little event. And you get there and you're like, oh my gosh, you're like 200,000 or 300,000 people. I mean, it takes over the whole city. It's enormous, right? And you're like, how can the media not cover this? But one of the blessings that's come out of that is, you've got news outlets like EWTN and Daily Signal and all these other people that have sort of exploded because they realize, we can't count on these people to cover it. We're going to come up with our own media outlets. All right, they're showing the front of the march. Speaking of, I think EWTN is a part of the coverage too as they start. Let's go to that and let's pick up their audio.
Once again to EWTN News Nightly Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales. Hey Eric, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing out there? Yeah, I tell you what, it is absolutely fabulous out here. Rain, sleet, or snow, nothing these people from showing their support the unborn and for the pregnant mothers out there. And what's interesting about this year is that Speaker Mike Johnson actually came down and spoke and talked a little bit about how young this country is and how it was brought up on Judeo-Christian beliefs, and those beliefs include the right to life. And I actually spoke with Speaker Johnson just before he went down to the rally, at the start of the rally, and I spent about a 10-minute conversation with him. I'm going to have more on that on EWTN News Nightly on Monday at 6 and 9 o'clock, so our viewers definitely want to tune in for that one. But also along with him, you had a variety of other lawmakers, many of them Congressman Chris Smith of New Jersey, a staunch a fighter for the unborn, but not only religious liberties as well, religious beliefs, not only here in the United States, but throughout the world. He fights for these things, and the release of Bishop out of Nicaragua that just happened, and Bishop Alvarez, and that is definitely a good thing. But we have a great vantage point up here. We're actually at the corner of Independence and New Jersey, and you're going to be able to see
of the March for Life in Washington, D.C. They're getting ready to march. One of the largest marches that happens year after year in Washington, D.C., in our country. This is, I think, the 50th, if not the 51st year. We know Roe versus Wade has been overturned. But that doesn't mean there's nothing left to march about, because now this issue is sort of hand-to-hand in different states. You're seeing on the split screen EWTN giving coverage of this. Is that Margaret? No, who is that? Oh, no, that's Catherine Hadro, who used to be their lead reporter, who we've interviewed with before. Let's see what Catherine's saying.
Here at the Supreme Court. Now, traditionally, this is where the march ends. However, this year, they're going to end between the Supreme Court and Capitol Hill. I will say, very anecdotally, fewer people at this stage of the march than I've noticed in years past when I've come, but more and more pro-lifers are starting to trickle in, including my friend Gia Chacon. Gia is founding president of For the Martyrs. You traveled all the way from California to be here for the March for Life, Gia.
Yes, I did. And as a California girl, I am suffering in this snow, to be perfectly honest. But there is nothing more important than the fight for life.
There, the big March for Life banner. A lot of kids will be up front. My son just sent me some pictures. So he did actually get a neat snow picture. And I'm excited because I see him wearing the little hat. I found this red, white, and blue hat for him to wear. And I saw it like a month ago. And I was like, this could be really good, because when you're there in D.C., you do see kind of a lot of the red, white, and blue colors being celebrated and worn. So, and at least he's keeping himself warm. But, the March for Life is an event that happens every year around this time. Why in January? Okay, because in January 22nd of 1973, that's when the Roe versus Wade decision came down. So right after that, a lot of people said, you know what, we've got to do something right away. We've got to show our response to that. We've got to show our opposition to that. We've got to get a public witness. And it's grown year after year to the point that March for Life is an organization. It's not just an event. It's a movement, right? They get involved in other states. They get involved in supporting legislation, getting media coverage, messaging, all this kind of stuff on these issues. And, and look, what's great about it too, it's an opportunity for people from all walks of life, if you will, sort of coming together, right? You see the sign there, March for Life. That's it. It's not one particular faith or an organization name. It's a message that unites so many different people. And they were mentioning earlier that some buses were showing up. My son's high school group went on a plane this year. Last year, they did take a couple of buses. When I went with them as a chaperone a couple years ago, we flew. But there are a lot of groups that come in by bus. You can imagine what that might be like, kind of a fun trip. But you see it all over that area at the March for Life in D.C., buses. Speaking of, the Texas Rally for Life is next weekend on Saturday, January 27th. You'll see buses too. I'm going to be there supporting my daughter's group, her middle school group, Holy Family Catholic School. They're bringing a bus, and it's not that far for them, but it still helps because it's hard to park when you get down there. But you'll see people from all over the state bringing in buses, vans, larger vehicles, whatever, coming in, and probably about 5,000 people or so will be there. A lot of great speakers that you can check out. We're going to be there. We're going to have a reception right after that. across the street from the south steps of the Capitol, 1005 Congress, from about 3:30 to 5. So as you're kind of cooling off after the events over at the Texas Rally for Life next Saturday, January 27th, come by our office. We'll have some refreshments, some snacks, say hello, get to know a little bit more people. But that's how we build the pro-life movement. And the work's not over. Now in Texas, abortion is not on the table anymore, right? Babies are protected through all stages. But we still have states like California, Planned Parenthood, people that are trying to reach into our state and pay women, cover their expenses and lure them to go to another state to have an abortion. We think often the instinct for the mother is to keep her child, but when you've got that type of marketing, and literally in New Mexico, reports that we heard that there is a Planned Parenthood or some type of abortion vehicle that's sort of a traveling abortion clinic, if you will, right across the border, right across the state line from El Paso to New Mexico, okay? They know exactly what they're trying to do. And so that means we have to continue to have a strong pro-life presence in the state of Texas. And part of that is making it clear people know we love them both, the mother and the child. It's not just about the baby in the womb. It's about when the baby is born and many years after that, in the health of the mother, the protection of the family, all those different things. That's why it's important for you to get in touch with your pregnancy care center. If you need kind of those resources or you know someone that does, you can go to texasheartbeatlaw.com. That's a website we have originally set up to support the law. Now is set up to get people connected with resources on this different issue. And so, okay, it looks like they're starting to move on the march. We'll go back to that coverage real quick and check our audio.
It seems to be on the rise here in the United States and around the world as well.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a global enterprise now. And Pope Francis is speaking to ambassadors from around the world, warning them, because many of them come from countries, certainly in the West,
I just have to jump in real quick. I see EWTN has upgraded their studio. It was a lot of fun to be there last year and to get to connect with people there. And I believe Catherine Hadro was there, or another member of their team. I know we've interacted with them before. I imagine, I don't know for sure, that our newly married and soon to be mother, or she is already a mother, expecting that Irina Grosu is there somewhere. I'm forgetting her new last name. I'll look it up in just a minute. Maybe Ashley will correct me. But we were there last year with her fiance, and I've only met him a couple times, so forgive me, Irina, that I'm forgetting his name. But wonderful, man. And so now they're expecting a baby. We're excited for them. And but I know they're usually there in some capacity. She is at the March for Life. So I imagine. But, look, when you see this public witness, right, this is why we do events like this. This is why we do stuff like the March for Life in the state of Texas and throughout the country. Agnew, thank you. What's his first name? Jake, John, Jack? I don't remember. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm being rude now. Well, I'll catch it in just a second. But we're excited for Irina, and but our coverage of the March for Life, the National March for Life, continues. But the reason we have these events is so people can know how important the issue is. They can be reminded of it, right? But a lot of times it creates an opportunity to educate people, right? As I mentioned, when this young lady challenged me at one of our events, men should not have a say in this. And then I reminded her, well, the men on the Supreme Court in 73 had a say in it. Why was that any different? So it's always situational, for them a lot of times. They only think that a man should have a valid voice if the man is on their side of the issue, if you will. Okay, so I'm trying to pull up our feed here. And, and look, I've talked to men before. One of the first calls I got when I was a lawyer working under Kelly Shackelford at First Liberty Institute was on a Friday afternoon, and I was about to leave the office, and a guy called in and said, my girlfriend's about to have an abortion, and I don't know what to do. Her family's supporting her. I think they had a little bit of a conflict and, maybe didn't, they weren't quite as in strong communication, and he just felt helpless, right? He didn't know what to do. He was looking for answers and support. I mean, he's probably hoping I would say, okay, here's what you do. Go to court, file this, we'll protect the baby. I didn't really have any options to present him. The Supreme Court had already ruled on that and said, in the situation of even when they're married, the husband doesn't have a role in this. And so it was heartbreaking to have that conversation with him. All I could tell him is, look, pray about it. do whatever you can to try to be in communication with the mother and their family. And maybe in some ways you can show some support. They can feel a little bit more comfortable. That's a tough position to be in, as a man, when you know that your child's life is in the balance, is at risk, and somebody else is preparing to take that life. And because of the courts and others, there's nothing you can do about it, right? And so abortion has hurt men. Not only has it hurt women, it has hurt men too. There have been men in those circumstances too that I've talked to before. And so, and look, so that means men, their voices and in this equation should have validity. I mean, obviously there's going to be a little more focus on the role of the mother and how it impacts her. But that doesn't mean, that men collectively and individually that we don't care about these issues, and part of that is supporting the mother in your life, right? Your children. I know how important that can be and helping them understand that in those circumstances, but beyond as well. And so we're giving you a live coverage of the March for Life in Washington, D.C. next week, Saturday, January 27th. Is going to be the Texas Rally for Life. So a shorter trip for you if you didn't make it all the way to D.C. And we'd love to see you there. I'm going to be there. Our group's going to be marching. I'm going to be there with some people from my church, from my kids' school. Texas Values is going to have a booth there. We're going to have a reception after the event from 3:30 to 5 at our offices at 1005 Congress. Free to come by, drop by, and say hello. We invite you to do that. But look, the work on the life issue is not over. Roe versus Wade has been overturned. Babies are protected through every stage in the state of Texas, but now we got to continue to educate people so they know how mothers can get resources. We stopped the backlash of these issues. We stopped the attacks on pregnancy centers. People have had their pregnancy centers bombed. They've been attacked. They've been threatened in a lot of ways. We should not have these kind of hostile environments. So there's still work to do. We know there's abortion pills coming through the mail. It's hard to regulate some of those things. And that's turning really a dorm room into an abortion clinic because a girl gets a pill and it might not go the right way. There might be side effects. She really needs medical attention. And there she is in her dorm room or in the bathroom suffering those consequences. Sometimes those consequences can be death. It can be very serious. And so there's a lot of issues like that. Making sure we can enforce, and we have district attorneys and other local officials that can enforce our pro-life laws. We know our attorney, Ken Paxton, and his team are very pro-life. They're going to do everything they can, but a lot of times it's up to those district attorneys to be enforcing the law locally. We know with the Texas Heartbeat Law, we've got civil enforcement. So, people individually, any civilian could go into court on that issue, but we know that doesn't always happen as well. So all of that together is things we need to do to create more of a pro-life support and culture in our state. All right, it looks like they're moving. It looks like the march is starting to march. So it's always fun to see those first couple of steps as they get going. And as everyone and I've been there a couple of times, they sort of fall in line behind this big banner, and they pretty much take up the entire street, if not the sidewalk as well. So if you haven't been to the March for Life in D.C. before, this is the time to go. Real quick, let's go to the video coverage. They're talking with Melissa Oden, who is an abortion survivor, if you can believe that.
Yeah, the reality is babies survive abortions. So babies survived before Roe. Many of us survived during Roe, and babies are still surviving after Roe. And I am one of those babies who survived a failed abortion. So I was poisoned and scalded over a 5-day period from a saline infusion abortion. Should have been delivered dead, the result of what the abortion industry would be a successful abortion. And, here I was accidentally born alive. And so days like today are such a reminder of the miracle of every life. But it's the reminder of why we keep marching as well.
Absolutely. And there it is on your sweatshirt.
That's right.
Miracles happen.
So
you're a miracle.
Fitting. Yes, indeed. And there's so many other miracles just like you, Melissa. And you talk about them in your book. Congratulations on that, by the way. Your book's called Abortion Survivors Break Their Silence. Sounds very powerful. Tell us about it.
It's a first ever book sharing the stories of 10 other abortion survivors, including through the voices of a couple of women who we have never heard from in the pro-life movement. A dear friend, Rebecca Hagan, shares her story of reversing her abortion, but we also share the story of a mom who stopped her late-term abortion and is raising her daughter, who is now about 12.
Wow.
And so these are these hidden stories. And what I want people to really take away from it is breaking our silence. Not everybody grabs a microphone.
I'm going to jump in. Melissa Oden is the woman's name that's speaking, an abortion survivor. She's spoken at several events here in the Austin area. Absolutely extraordinary. We'll try to post a link to her book. I imagine one of the women in the book is Gianna Jessen, and also an abortion survivor. I think she was 7.5 weeks along in her mother's womb. And when the abortion entity tried to end her life, she survived. Same thing, it was a saline abortion. She was burned on the inside and out, and she still suffers from some of those effects of it. But I don't know, I think she's like my age. I mean, she's been living a long time, and she's a warrior. Love Gianna Jessen. If you're watching or you hear this, shout out to you. Thank you for your pro-life witness. But I represented her at the U.S. Supreme Court, one of the first cases I worked on as a lawyer, and I got to write about her story and her background. And because there was a case going up to the U.S. Supreme Court on the issue of partial birth abortion, we stayed in touch then. Gianna came and testified on the Born Alive Infant Protection Act. She's done a lot of great work over the years, and I'd imagine she's in D.C. today making the rounds just like Melissa and being such a wonderful and incredible pro-life witness. Hey, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes because we've been on for about an hour. I hope you've enjoyed some of this coverage of the March for Life as the march is starting. I'm going to see if we can post that one picture, though, of my son I sent over with Johnny with the snow, because he looks like he's having a lot of fun. You can see a lot of people there, too, in the video segment. But there he is. So there's my oldest, Johnny Saenz, out at the March for Life, enjoying that hat that I picked up for him and the snow. And but I bet he's having the time of his life. I'm proud of him for continuing the pro-life message in his own life, and so many young people out there that are doing the same. And shout out to St. Dominic Savio Catholic High School and all the Catholic high schools and many other schools from different faiths and denominations that took the time to make the trip and to take kids out there. Our principal's out there on the trip. He's one of our newest member of our staff at the kids' school. And he's out there, came all the way from New York, I think, in D.C. to Texas to then turn around and go on this trip to D.C. But I bet he's having a great time. But, to take a couple of days off to make that public witness on an issue that a lot of times people don't want to talk about, right? So you got a lot of schools there really showing what they believe in and setting a great example for their students, right? To know what it means to get involved in something in your community, in your country, and to do it in a peaceful way. These marches and rallies don't have to be areas of conflict. Sadly, we see that in some other issues where things have gotten violent. You're never going to see that at a pro-life march. And if it happens, it's not going to come from our side. People will try to instigate, but I don't think I've ever seen the pro-life movement, the March for Life, turn into something like that. And so, and any of those things that may have happened in the past, I think the pro-life movement is, really in many ways said that's not what we're about. We're about being peaceful, loving, and supportive of all life. And so, 51st annual March for Life. I see that there on the screen there. Roe versus Wade was overturned last year, but the work on the life issue does not end. We're going to put a website up soon on some of this issue called Love Them Both. Look for that soon with a lot of resources away so we can show how we love the mother and the child. And as we move forward on these issues, if you see value in our work, please consider a tax-deductible donation to Texas Values. You can make that at our website at txvalues.org. We have 13 different people that officially work for us. We have a lot of volunteers and supporters in all 254 counties of the state. We collectively have a $2 million budget. And so that allows us to do the work we do, whether it's advocacy in the courts, the legislature, the media, producing this radio show and podcast, and the different things that we do, traveling when our work is needed, when we need to show up like we did at the city of Austin and shut down their ability to give sweetheart deals and funding in a roundabout way to Planned Parenthood, the work that we do across the state, educating people on these issues, going to the Capitol, making sure we have pro-life laws and protecting them. All that is done because people like you continue to make a decision to support us. So those donations are tax deductible. We're a 501c3 organization, so you can make your donation right now at txvalues.org. And that's how together we can protect faith, family, freedom, and of course life in the state of Texas. Hey, that does it for us today on this special segment of the Texas Values Report. Remember, the Texas Values Report is a weekly show. It's typically on Facebook at 11 a.m., but you can find it on podcast, on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, you name it. Go to our website, click on podcast. You can see all the different ways that you can get it. Some local radio stations cover it. So God bless you, and we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.